If you're a film student or cinephile, you're familiar with the French New Wave or Nouvelle Vague. Starting in 1958, directors like François Truffaut, Jean-Luc Godard, Agnes Varda, and more eschewed Hollywood conventions and techniques, pioneering their own brand of independent cinema. But there's an equally brave filmmaker working at the same time in the United States. Yet, his name is not lauded as greatly as the French Bohemians. That man is John Cassavetes, and today we'll be exploring his style and filmography. You ever see Rosemary's Baby? You know the creepy husband that betrays Mia Farrow? No, not that one. Yeah, him. That's John Cassavetes. His first acting credit was in 1951, but he wouldn't start directing until 1958. His most well-known roles are the aforementioned Guy Woodhouse in Rosemary's Baby, and Victor Franco from The Dirty Dozen, of which he was nominated for an Oscar. His acting background gave him an especially potent advantage as a director. After all, the job of an actor is to inhabit characters, to do the mental homework. To act is to be a paradox, to exhaustively analyze roles, but also lack self-consciousness and just feel. As an actor, Cassavetes knew the psychology and physiology at play. He understood the process. So it's no surprise movies with him behind the camera feature some of the greatest performances of all time. Speaking of which, let's get into his actual directing. It's widely agreed Cassavetes comes into his own with 1968's Faces. When you watch the film, the first thing you'll notice is how unprecious he is with the camera. Shot on grainy 16mm, the handheld camera gives us an uncomfortable intimacy to the volatile characters. There were better cameras at that time, and it's not like tripods and three-point lighting didn't exist. He just chose not to use them. He wanted an abrasive, in-the-moment aesthetic. Much like Godard and the French Bohemians at the same time, Cassavetes sought to shake the audience. It's not hard to draw parallels between Cassavetes' camera work and the digital revolution of the 2000s, where auteurs like Steven Soderbergh, Robert Rodriguez, David Lynch, and especially Michael Mann eschewed beauty for effect. People complained, but the craftsmen stuck to their cameras and forged ahead. For more about Michael Mann, I recommend Scout Tafoya's terrific essay on Mann's 2009 film, Public Enemy. Cassavetes continued to refine his sensibilities, moving away from 16mm, but he continued to use the camera functionally. Nowadays, indie films are expected to look more dazzling than blockbusters. Companies like A24, Neon, and Annapurna churn out glowing indies with rich color palettes, smooth as butter camera work, and cinematography that prompts endless posts from film buffs on Instagram and Letterboxd. Search for amateur short films, and even there you'll find a precious quality to the shots. And that's not inherently a bad thing, but I think we could learn something by going back to the blunt genius of the godfather of American indies. Nowadays, we fetishize the capabilities of cameras, technology, and aesthetics so much, it's unfortunate more filmmakers don't embrace the pragmatism of Cassavetes. In terms of directing actors, Cassavetes is one of the greats, avoiding pitfalls. Adrienne Weiss, a teacher at NYU and Columbia, gave an interview with MusicBed blog on directing. We can use her words to illustrate how Cassavetes used her techniques even back then. When asked about classic directing mistakes, she replied, "The classic one is trying to describe what emotion you want the actor to have in the scene. You never want to say, 'You're really upset here,' or 'You're really angry here.' You don't want to go straight at emotion like that. What you want to do is give them the circumstances and the facts that are going to produce that emotion naturally." Another mistake directors make is describing in detail what they liked about the last take. You never want to be specific about what you liked, because it completely kills the actor's ability to be spontaneous. By watching footage of Cassavetes at work and hearing testimonies from his actors, we see he completely avoids the pitfalls Weiss cites, and excels at giving actors circumstances and facts to keep spontaneity, and the cast still appreciates him for that.
John never gave direction. Direct. He would never say, "Sit there." He would say, "Now listen, if, I don't know, you came in, you're tired, and you're hungry, he wants you to sit there, you understand?" That's what he said. But he said, and Peter would turn to me, he said, "Do you understand what this man is saying?" I said, "Yeah, he wants you to sit there." He said, "Well, if he wants me to sit there, why doesn't he tell me to sit there?" I said, I don't know, Peter. Ask him why he doesn't tell you to sit there. He might tell you in about another half hour why he doesn't tell you to sit there. We had a lot of fun.
His films are labeled as highly improvisational, but Cassavetes wrote extensive scripts. Reportedly, his first draft of Shadows was 250 pages long. Part of the reason his films crackle with such force is the freedom he gives his actors despite the extensive scripts. Philip LaPate, in an article for the New York Times, said, "To keep the acting free and open, Cassavetes insisted on not blocking or lighting elaborately beforehand. The camera had to adjust to the actors, necessitating a handheld, semi-documentary feel." Film critics' initial resistance to him may have reflected their formalist preference for the carefully composed shot, as in Ford and Antonioni. Cassavetes had hit upon a new kind of destabilized, fluid image, and if his films do have ravishing visual passages, they come from the camera serendipitously following actors' natural rhythms. This darting camera work supported his vision of life as a shifting, bewildering affair. It also meant that the actors had to stay in the moment, never knowing when the camera was on them. His stories are frequently centered around domesticity. Even when he flares into genre films like The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, the scale is far from large. His films are painfully intimate. We film fans foam at the mouth about how David Fincher shoots wide shots all the time, but Cassavetes does the opposite. In contrast, he ties us at the waist with his characters as they self-destruct. We can't escape and have to reckon with the actors' faces, watching their emotions flood from them. These films are anything but detached. Cassavetes gave withering portraits of societal roles, on husbands and wives, fathers and children. He tackled themes like mental illness, racial tension, alcoholism, toxic masculinity, and domestic abuse, themes we struggle to address even today. But Cassavetes was deconstructing Americana during Americana. Most prominent among his themes is identity, especially in regards to societal expectations. As husbands, fathers, lovers, and sons, what expectations are we saddled with? Let's not overlook the fact that he had a particular affinity for showing female perspectives. In Faces and A Woman Under the Influence, women are slut-shamed and mistreated at every turn by men, only for those same men to do far more despicable things and be accepted as boys being boys. You try to bring that up now, and people throw their razors away en masse. His masterpieces dare to ask, under sexist restraints, how do you function? There are no simple answers, which is exactly what Cassavetes wanted to achieve.
No, I don't think a person can live without a philosophy. What is philosophy? Philos, in Greek, means friend or love. Love and friend, it's synonymous. And the study is any aphi is the study of, so it's a study of love. And to have a philosophy is to know how to love and to know where to put it. Because you can't put it everywhere. You walk around, you got to be a minister or a priest saying, yes, my son, or yes, my daughter, bless you. But people don't live that way. They live with anger and hostility and problems and lack of money, lack of, tremendous disappointments in their life. So what they need is a philosophy. What I think what everybody needs is a way to say, where and how can I love? Can I be in love so that I can live? So that I can live with some degree of peace, And I guess every picture we've ever done has been in a way to try to find some kind of philosophy for the characters in the film.
His films can be startling when characters say one thing and then do another. There's an argument to be made it's distracting, but it's clearly intentional. Cassavetes strove to capture humanity at its most complex and head-scratching. Whether his characters find peace or not is far too complex to answer here. Whether Cassavetes himself answers that is debatable, but it hardly matters if the characters achieve enlightenment or not, because a concrete ending isn't the point. The point is watching the characters trying to find peace. After all, they're reflections of us, humanity. I bemoaned earlier that not enough filmmakers are willing to take risks like Cassavetes. That being said, there are a handful of people working today that build off of his foundation. If you're still on the fence about seeing Cassavetes, perhaps a list of people he influenced will nudge you, or help bring his style further into focus. Vincent Gallo's film Buffalo 66 has a similar strain of volatile characters. It was shot in '98, but it could have been '78 for how grungy it is. vicious family dynamics, and a world-weary quality carry over, as well as Ben Gazzara. Darren Aronofsky's films might not seem like an immediate comparison, but his dedication in capturing the grime of societal underbellies isn't far off, especially utilizing Maurice Alberti's cinematography. And how could The Meadow Black Swan exist without Opening Night laying the foundation for the blending of the surreal and performative? According to Emmanuel Levy, Robert Altman, Elaine May, and John Sayles were also influenced. Incidentally, Elaine May directed Mikey and Nicky, which stars Cassavetes and Peter Falk. It takes heavy cues in direction and story from John Cassavetes. If you're interested, it's now in the Criterion Collection. Also, Scorsese has some eloquent thoughts on the master.
With John Cassavetes' characters, the emotion was always up front. It was at once their cross and their salvation. John's approach was warm, embracing, focused on people.
No.
Relationships were all he was interested in. The laughter and the games, the tears and the guilt. The whole roller coaster of love.
If you're a young filmmaker, I couldn't recommend Cassavetes' films enough. I know it's tempting to try and emulate slick directors like Kubrick and Fincher and try to write mind-bending stories like Chris Nolan. But with Cassavetes, there's an unbeatable honesty at play that was ahead of its time then and even now. Instead of making yet another student film with a meta plot about somebody going crazy, I ask you to consider the potency of deconstructing the immediate reality around you. Instead of obsessing over perfectly crafted shots, focus on working with actors and writing stellar parts for them. The day we grow tired of stories about the common man is the day empathy dies. But even if that did happen, at least we'd still have John Cassavetes' towering work.
This is a stupid town. It is a stupid town in the sense that it is maybe one of the largest cities in the world. It's lazy. It's polite. It is so sissy in its mentality, so go along with everything that goes along. It's corporate owned. It's a town owned by Hollywood, and it's about time it grew up. It's about time that it took art and said, come on, baby, show me something. And we're showing them something. And there are not many people showing anything.